Okay, I'm going to keep this really short. And if you come here regularly, you know that's going to be a real challenge. Okay, who has Christmas traditions? Okay, there's a few hands. That's fantastic, because this is going to make this part a whole lot easier. What I want you to do is I want you to go and speak to somebody, go and chat with somebody, and find out their Christmas tradition and what Christmas means to them. Okay, so please, you're quite free to stand up, walk around, mingle, chat. What are your Christmas traditions? And I want to hear what your traditions are. Fantastic. It sounds like there's lots of chatter, which is great. Annie, where are you? Where's Annie? You there? Ah, excellent. Okay. Who wants to share their Christmas traditions? Who wants to share what they found out? There's some just down here, Annie. Remember what the Christmas traditions, what Christmas means to you? That'd be fantastic.
When at Christmas we always have a big party with all our family.
Ah, fantastic. Great. Excellent.
In Christmas, we always celebrate Jesus' birthday.
Ah, lovely. They're good.
On Christmas, I like opening presents and having a Christmas dinner.
I like that too. Yeah, it's good. Excellent. Okay, anybody else want to share their traditions?
The birth of Jesus.
The birth of Jesus. Excellent. That's a really good one to celebrate. So this is traditions and meaning of Christmas, which is really good.
On Christmas Day, I go to the Baptist Church in Northfield for my Christmas dinner, along with about 80 other people who are on their own.
Wow, fantastic. That's a really great thing that the Baptist Church do. Brilliant. Amazing. Anybody else want to share their traditions? Okay. It's interesting, isn't it, what the various things that we do around Christmas times and the traditions that we build as either as families and the memories for the kids that we have, and maybe the memories that you have as a child. And one of the things that I'm really keen on, obviously as a Christian minister, is that we don't lose sight of what Christmas actually is all about. We live in a world that is bombarded with stuff about you have this and your life will be made better. You've seen the adverts. You buy this hair product and you'll have glowing, shiny hair. Oh, really? Okay. Lovely. You'll have this car and your life will be so much better. We live in a world where it's like you consume stuff and it will be better. And marketers have done a great ploy in building Christmas around this. The nativity that we've just seen centered around Jesus, and they made reference to the King. I want to just talk to you just for a few moments about Jesus, the King, if that's okay. Because actually, Jesus as King makes a massive difference to the way that we live our lives when we understand that correctly and rightly. So for us as Christians, it's this idea and this understanding that the King of glory came down. And if it's okay, I would just like to read a few verses from Scripture, if that's okay with you. Have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but made himself nothing, taking the form of a servant, being born in the likeness of men, and being found in human form, he humbled himself by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. Therefore God has highly exalted him and bestowed on him the name that is above every name, so that at the name of Jesus, every knee should bow in heaven and on earth and under the earth, and every tongue confess that Jesus Christ is Lord, to the glory of God the Father. This birth, we've got this little manger, haven't we? If I can pick this up, and we plonk the manger in the center of the nativity, and we've got baby Jesus. This baby Jesus wasn't just it wasn't just a normal birth. It wasn't just a normal event. The people of the Old Testament that we read spoke forth of this birth. I don't know about you, but my birth wasn't foretold a few hundred years before, maybe 9 months before. But before that, my birth wasn't foretold. And it says this about Jesus in Isaiah chapter 9. And this is Isaiah who writes this and speaks this of Jesus. For to us a child is born, to us a son is given, and the government shall rest upon his shoulders. And his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the increase of his government and peace there will be no end. And on the throne of David and over his kingdom, to establish it and uphold it with justice and righteousness from this time forth and forevermore. This Jesus that Isaiah spoke of wasn't just a normal baby. He was the King of glory come down. And so I don't know about you, but I don't know many kings that were born in a manger that wasn't their own. I don't know many kings that were born in a barn that wasn't their own. This Jesus gave up everything, born as a baby. God stepping down into this world in which we live as a vulnerable, needy baby. I don't know about you, but I don't know many kings that were born in such a circumstance and such a situation. I don't know many kings that were born with animals' droppings around on the floor. I can know and tell you of many kings that were born into privilege, but not many kings who were born into a barn. And it kind of gives you an indication, doesn't it, of the kind of king that this Jesus is. So what makes this king different, other than the circumstances of his birth? Matthew 20:28 tells us that this king came not to be served. He wasn't served with caviar, he wasn't served in a palace, he didn't have servants running around after him, but this king came to be served. What does that look like? What does it look like to be served by the king? What does that even mean, even? Anybody got any ideas? What marks would this mark this servant king as different? Anybody got any ideas? When the Bible talks about Jesus as a servant king, what were the marks of his life? Washing the disciples' feet, John, absolutely. People who were sick, what did he do? People who were lepers, people who were outcast in society, people who wouldn't really want people around them, people who had infectious diseases, who a normal king wouldn't have gone anywhere near. I couldn't get anywhere near a king. And I haven't got an infectious disease. And yet this king would get down in the dirt with those who had infectious diseases and touch them and look at them in the eye and bring dignity and value. This king, there was something remarkably different about this king, because he got down on a level with ordinary people like you and me and served and ministered into the heart. Now, actually, Matthew 20:28 reveals something about the culmination of this Jesus and his servanthood. And the way that Jesus' servanthood is marked was not just through the way that he lived, but in the way that he died. Jesus' biggest service and biggest act of giving was when he gave his life willingly. The whole point of the Christmas narrative was not that we just have a nice nativity to tell. Not that we just have a point of which we can see all the kids enjoying themselves and singing the carols and singing the tunes, and fantastic as it is. The point of the Christmas narrative was that this baby would one day go to the cross. Why did he go to the cross? What was the need of this servant king to ultimately fulfill this mission? Because actually, if you look at the earlier verses in that passage in Isaiah chapter 9 that I read from, it says that the world is in darkness and it needed a light. If you watch the news or you follow Twitter or Facebook or whatever it is that you might be on, you won't need to be on there very long to understand that we live in a dark world. We still live in a dark world where things happen that are atrocious, that we wouldn't even want to mention in front of kids. But we live in a world that still needs the great light. And this great light is Jesus, the servant king. You see, maybe some of you say, well, Ian, I'm a nice person, I'm a good person. And that's probably true. But it doesn't remove the fact that this servant king, Jesus, came as a baby, went to the cross, so that ultimately your life could be restored to relationship with God and bring you peace. One of the wonderful things that Isaiah said is this: Jesus will be called Prince of Peace. You see, I think actually whether you've got loads or you've got little, it doesn't really matter, because each one of us knows what it is to be have a restless heart and a restless soul. And you see, this Jesus is the only one who really can speak peace and bring peace into the depth and core of who you are. Regardless of your circumstances or situations, this Jesus is the servant king. And so, whether you feel or think yourself as the worst person in the world, and will Santa really come if I've been good enough? The reality of the gospel actually isn't based upon whether we've been good enough or not. The reality of the gospel is that Jesus came while we were still sinners, while we were still far off from him, while we were still in our mess, while we were still far off from him and restless. Jesus came as the servant king. And you see, the idea of the kingship is that actually we all live under some kind of government and rule. But this Jesus, he brings his rule into the hearts and lives of people. It's not about a geographical location or domain, but about the rule and the reign of Jesus in the hearts and lives of those who willingly submit to him and accept this offer of peace, this great gift that we celebrate this Christmas. So, as a disciple of Jesus, as somebody who's a follower of Jesus, how are you living under the rule and reign of the King of Kings, of the servant king this year? And in a moment, I'm going to just interview Michael before we finish, because Michael has grasped something of what it looks like to live in light of the servant king. Because to be a part of the kingdom of the servant king means that we are servants of the king. And I'm going to interview Michael in a moment, just to kind of help shape some of that. So what are the things that, as you as a follower of Jesus, might need to do this year or this Christmas to serve somebody else? Maybe you're not a follower of Jesus. Maybe you're here and you're a guest, and you've come, and your kids or your grandkids are in the nativity, and you've come because you want to support. Maybe you're not a follower of Jesus. But maybe this year, maybe this Christmas, you might begin to explore what it looks like to live in light of Jesus as the servant king, the one who came in order that you might have peace with God. Michael, would you come and just help land this morning? Annie, can I have the mic? Because one of the things for us as Christians living in light of this King Jesus is that we serve. Now, I want to say it again, because wasn't that fantastic? And over the course of the last few months, I'm going to give you some numbers, if that's okay. Eve, correct me if I'm wrong, but the average number of attendance in our Sunday school, our J team, has rocketed up to late 30s, early 40s. On the actual register, we got 55 kids on the actual register. Now, I don't know about you, but that's pretty big, isn't it? Yeah, I mean, God's gracious, so it's like that's fun. But what I want to say is that we're seeing some growth now. One of the strains is that if you continue to manage growth on the number of volunteers, it creates a strain. So this is a bit of a challenge really for us as a church members and parents. And I'm going to ask Michael to explain really why he serves, in light of who the King Jesus, servant king, is, why he serves in the kids ministry. Because you do, don't you, Michael? 3 times a month sometimes. So would you just explain what it is and why it is that you do what you do?
Where do I start? Morning, church. It was after Zachary was born that I realized that there was something that happens in the background in church. because I always used to come to church and I used to sit in the congregation and didn't really pay attention to what was happening there. But since we've had Zachary, I realized that there are people who are giving up their time on a Sunday. They don't listen to the word, etc., but they're inputting into my son. So I won't say I had a calling, but I felt it within me that if someone is willing to give up time for my son, then I should be able to do that for somebody else's child. And it was in light of that that I kind of stepped up to the plate.
Fantastic. So you saw somebody else serving your son and other people's kids, and you thought, actually, I'm going to do as a result of that. Now,
Exactly, yes.
Okay. So for me, that's a bit of it's a challenge, isn't it? Actually, the act of service, because you could have sat there and you thought, aren't our kids' workers fantastic?
Exactly.
Yeah,
yes.
they're giving an hour or whatever it is a week investing in my. It's fantastic. I can sit back and relax.
Yes, I could have easily done that. But since I've gotten involved with it, I realized that I'm benefiting a lot because I can see the growth in the children.
Yeah.
They're really like sponges. And I think I'm the Pied Piper around the place.
Yeah.
Because I know all the kids' names.
Yeah.
But it's a really positive feeling, and it's a really positive thing to do.
It's fantastic. Thank you, Michael. Give Michael a round of applause. Thank you, Michael. So the application of the idea of Jesus as servant king is that he marks us to be servants. See, not just within the context of our church activity. Now, Michael's what you also might not know is Michael's attitude of servanthood carries through into his workplace. And can I just encourage you to have a conversation with Michael about that? Just how he lives his life in order to serve and to live in that way. Because he's been marked by Jesus, the servant king. Now, maybe for you this morning, we don't do that for guilt, but I do that because if we're followers of Jesus, if we've been marked by him, then actually it carries through into the actions. And so as you serve, somebody else will serve you, and vice versa. Because if we have an attitude and a heart of giving, then it creates a space for God to do whatever he wants to do in us and meet our needs in ways that we might not ever even begin to imagine if we live with a perspective in light of this Jesus who gave everything, that we then too give our all to him. And so you might not be able to serve in kids ministry. You might not be able to serve in other aspects of life of the church, but I dare say there will be some aspects. But maybe how can you think about this week? Maybe your neighbour who's locked in and doesn't have a chance to get out. Maybe could you maybe take them round a box of chocolates or something more practical and useful and say, I want to give something, a gift to you, and serve them in some way. What about a colleague who's struggling and maybe got relationship difficulties or difficulties at work or whatever? How is it that you could serve them and invest in their life? If you've been marked by the King of Kings, the servant king, allow his heart of service towards you to shape what you do tomorrow and the rest of your life. Thanks for listening. You've listened really well, kids. Thank you for your production.